So Gen Zers are not drinking as much as other generations, but all isn't lost for brands and retailers trying to reach this group. So to explain why, I have with me Kaylee Theriault from NIQ. She spoke at our on and off premise adult beverage session here in Florida yesterday. So Kaylee, thanks for joining us. And by the numbers, who is drinking by what generation group?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some household level data here. So at Nielsen IQ, we track by the household. So when we think about Gen Z that are of legal drinking age, we're going to refer to those ones that are living on their own. They're no longer in their parents' basements, as I joke, but they're actually financially responsible in making their own purchases, both in the on and off premise. And then the off-premise side of things, they're representing about 10% of buying households, which I think is much larger than what some people might assume, because there's a lot of headlines that say Gen Z just aren't drinking. And we're gonna shut that down here. We're fact checking right now, and Gen Z are drinking. They're just more intentional with their consumption than other generations once were at that same, new to drinking age. So they represent about 10% of our buying households, a little bit less on the dollar side of things because they don't have that full financial power that other demographics or other generations do have. They're early in their careers. They're just getting settled. And there's a lot of other things that they're spending their discretionary income on, but we'll save that for another day. I'm going to jump to the complete opposite end from Gen Z and talk a little bit about the boomer generation. And they are still our largest demographic for buying households at 36%, and they represent just about the same when it comes to the dollars being spent. So a lot of wealth exists within this generation, but over the next several years, their wealth will be relatively similar, but their dollar spend will go down because that discretionary income will shrink as they retire and age a bit as well and focus on health and wellness things. And I always say we don't want to forget about millennials and those Gen X in the middle. And Gen X are so often the forgotten generation. And we don't see a whole lot of over-indexing on things that interest them or potential trends on labels and stuff. So Gen X are definitely a smaller generation, but over the next few years, they're going to represent the bulk of the buying power across the total store. And right now they sort of have this split mindset where they're purchasing for themselves. They're taking care of, their children. And then they're also taking care of their parents that are aging within that boomer demographic. So a lot happening with that generation as well. And then we have millennials. I would say they're split between elder millennials and younger millennials, some with children, some without children, still depending on where they're at in life stages. But they eventually will also be very powerful in terms of what they're able to purchase within the beverage alcohol industry. Still driving a ton of innovation and new products that exist, while Gen X tend to have their favorite brands picked out. They're a little more brand loyal, and they just enjoy purchasing the same things over and over again. Millennials are still seeking out a little bit more on the trial side, and they're willing to try some new products. So when we think about all of these demographics, we want to make sure, we're not over focusing on one or the other, but we're really tailoring products to what your core consumers are, I should say, and our core consumers in the industry, and ensuring that we have products that fit all their needs and all of the occasions in which they're looking to consume.
Cool. So, well, for one thing, so it sounds like Gen Xers are getting like the crappy part of the deal, right? Where no one thinks about us. And
they're also very established in what they like to buy.
And then we're stuck, either we got kids or we're helping our parents. So, so for Gen Z, how do we reach them? What's the best way to reach them?
Yeah, Gen Z are interesting. We can look at what influences Gen Z to make a purchase or to consume products. And let's go back in time a little bit when the older Gen Z started to turn legal drinking age, and that happened during COVID. And I don't like to go back to COVID too often. We do it on occasion, but what do we do when we turn 21? We go to bars and restaurants, and we know that's where a lot of trial happens within the beverage alcohol industry, because you can try a single drink without having to buy an entire bottle and, mix it yourself in the off-premise. So one way to reach Gen Z is to having products and flavors that might be of interest to them. Fruit flavors did it for millennials, those classic, lime, black cherry, things like that when I think about the seltzer world. But Gen Z, I think, are going to be a little more complex in the flavors that they seek out. Maybe it's a sweet and savory combination. It could be more worldly flavors because they are, I would say, a bit more cultured than some other demographics, because social media has been such a big influence on them. And so when we consider social media as an influence, I think they learn a lot while they're on TikTok or Instagram or whatever their social media is of choice, really understanding what products do exist out there. And we also know that their social circle in real life and their family are big influences on what they want to consume. So those are both big drivers for them.
All right, well, stuff to keep an eye out for this generation. So
Definitely.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.